oftentimes like what we'll do is we'll create like a base template for clients, and then they'll use that for their website, and then they'll have their starting prices, and then based off that base template we'll create like 3 other templates where they could have that next indicator that creates like a sub-segment to their niche.
Okay, that's really smart. Gosh. Yeah, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I love that. I want to go like incorporate that into all my stuff. Welcome to the MediaBooks Podcast, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing. Owning a virtual firm today means having a professional and modern online presence, and in this podcast, we talk about how to do just that. My name is Kristen Corey, and I'm the owner of MediaBooks, a media agency that provides creativity exclusively to accounting firms. And if you're an accounting firm owner, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the MediaBooks Podcast. With me today, I have Irene Seelig. Irene is the CEO and co-founder of Account Groove, empowering accounting firms to price with confidence, land premium clients, and accelerate cash flow. A Forbes 30 Under 30 alum, she previously built and exited a multi-7-figure tech firm serving global brands such as Adidas and Burberry. Thank you so much, Irene, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Well, please, I read your bio. Tell me a little bit about yourself beyond the bio. Who are you? Who are you?
So thanks again for having me on. So a little bit about me. Like you mentioned, I've had my own service business in the past, building out custom tech. And bringing forward to what I currently do now. I love helping people out with their pricing. It was a huge struggle for me in the beginning when starting out my own business and being a professional service provider and honing in on different pricing psychologies. So that was huge. And then a little bit more about me. I've always kind of been in the e-commerce space, helping out brands with e-commerce. And then now I've just been honing more and more in terms of, offering, how can you automate proposals to engagements, to help you attract more premium clients and upsell without feeling salesy.
Feeling salesy. That's a big one. What inspired you to build Account Groove specifically for accounting firms?
So in terms of, where I was building out our own tech firm, and selling through, clients like Adidas, et cetera, one of the biggest challenges is as soon as, we got the discovery call, we were all excited and you have the discovery call, but then what are the next steps? How can you make a smooth onboarding process for a client? And then of course, get paid on time is key.
Yeah.
And, we went out to the market, kind of looked and assessed what kind of proposal to billing platforms were out there to optimize that workflow. And what we came back with, or what I saw, especially coming from a tech perspective, was that there was a lot of outdated tech. There was also, some platforms that were a little bit more newer with newer tech builds. But the one thing that we saw a gap in was this, looking at pricing, also looking at the fact of, how can you help out with that flow, but make it as well a smooth onboarding process for a client, where they can really easily see what kind of services you provide. Of course, you have that on your website, but then how do you dial that in per client and doing that more in an automated way per client? So there's various ways with proposal templates, etc. So that's what drove kind of the build of Account Groove, and why we decided to do it was because we went out ourselves as service providers and couldn't really find a solution that we were looking for. And then finding something that, again, would like hone into pricing. So sold that business and then started Account Groove. And then, yeah, to your other question about why accounting firms was through the sale of that process. Of course, our bookkeeper and our tax accountant was huge in terms of, looking at what we could sell for. And just through that whole process, they were amazing and gave us a lot of support and advice. And then, so we wanted to help more accounting firms in terms of we felt like they were giving us so much advice and such good pointers. And obviously the value add was huge for us. And we saw that the whole kind of accounting industry was kind of shifting away from just doing tax or just, doing some tax planning and offering more advisory work and trying to figure out how do I price this? How do I bring in more value-based billing? So all these questions came up. On that side, when we dove into looking at the space as a whole, and we're like, oh, this is fun. This is exciting that there's this huge shift going on with them wanting to be more of like fractional CFOs and the boom of CAS type of firm. And so, yeah, it got us excited and decided to hone in more on them specifically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've talked about kind of websites and like the whole pricing, building a pricing strategy and then bringing that to your website. That's something that I notice a lot. A lot of our clients are in transition from a corporate job to running their own firms. And so we get them really early on when they're trying to figure out their services and their packages and pricing. And so the services page is always like a huge hurdle in our process. So what do you like, what's your take on like best practices? Should they list their prices out? Should they have packages? I've heard like starting at prices, and then I've also heard like an average price. Like there's so much information out there. Can you give some clarity to like just general best practices?
Yeah, no, great question. So, yeah, we get the same question a lot, if they're just starting out, spinning off from, a big four or was with a larger practice beforehand, and how can they start honing in on their pricing? We definitely recommend utilizing proven pricing psychology, like 3 tiers.
Yeah.
Huge. It's a game changer. So including that onto your website, not just inside of your proposal. And then because if you start to think about the type of clients you're going to get in through the door. So typically, if we see a firm that's already niching down, excellent. If you're not quite niching down, it's okay. We can start indicating and understanding, okay, maybe you have 3 niches that, you're attracting, or 4 niches that you're attracting. And then we can start building out packages specifically to those types of clients. So we always typically start with like, okay, here's your base kind of 3-tiered proposal. Definitely reflect that onto your website. Again, if you're more general, then, put that there. But I do want to emphasize definitely, niche down if you can. And then if you niche down, you become, that expert inside of that specific niche for the types of services that you provide. And then adding those 3 tiers. So adding 3-tiered proposals and then reflecting that on your website, and utilizing price anchoring is also key if you're going to put your pricing on the website.
Can you define what that is, price anchoring?
Yeah, so for price anchoring, you're going to start with the highest tier first. Actually, sometimes it makes people a little nervous to do that, because they're like, why would I put my highest tier first? Like, I just want to, sign them as a client. It actually helps navigate them to your middle premium tier, if not higher, because if you think about it, it's a lot easier to go down a hill than up a hill.
Okay.
And they start, if they're reading left to right, which we all do, they'll start reading all the different services that you offer. And then realize as they get to your, base level tier, they start to realize, oh, I kind of want some of these other services. Like if I'm looking to grow my business or improve it this next year, they can really help me out and do that by getting more of those premium, services. So then again, it's just honing in on that. And yeah, on our platform, we see 71% of the time that middle tier, if not higher, being selected. So we definitely recommend price anchoring, utilizing 3 tiers, reflecting that on your website. And then in terms of pricing, this one we go back and forth on. So we have some clients, or users of ours, accountants, who they really want to put the price in terms of they hate themselves going to someone's site and not seeing pricing. So we say, okay, if you really want to put a price, put a starting out price. So I'm not sure exactly, what you recommend or what you've seen in terms of analytics, but that's what we've seen in terms of some analytics we've looked at on firms is putting that starting out price, because the last thing that you want to do is just narrow yourself down on a specific budget, because, depending upon the type of clients you have come in, if you, let's say, you have a client who's a $5 million business versus a $10 million business versus a 500K business, they're going to want different things. They're going to also require more of your time, depending upon, what they're, where they're at in terms of their business. And so, yeah, doing the starting out pricing is what we recommend if you're going to put a price, because then those pricings can obviously change once you send out the proposal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's dependent on so many factors, because I've had people say to me like, oh, like you shouldn't put any price at all because I can sell them like in the call on something that they initially thought they couldn't afford.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yes, but also I think, $500 a month is very different than $10,000 a month. And so like, where are you in this like huge range? So I also like starting at pricing. I think it's a sort of a respectful maybe way to just say like, we're meeting, like we just need to have like a baseline definition of like if we're
where are we at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
No, I always appreciate seeing like starting out pricing, because then it kind of it doesn't set the bar in terms of like, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to be paying, but it sets the bar in terms of like understanding, okay, where are they roughly at as a
Yeah.
service provider. And pricing says a lot about you too, so undercharging, overcharging, and that's why having those 3 tiers are key that you want to also include on your website and then also within the proposal. But having that starting pricing will help gauge, okay, yeah, this is someone that I could definitely work with. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you said something earlier that I thought I want to ask you more about. You talked about how like you should put the largest package first. Because I've seen your platform, I assume like you mean like the columns
Yep.
first, like the first column package. Does it matter whether it's like vertical or horizontal or like the design, I guess, elements,
Yeah.
or if it's just on like a Word doc or like an invoice?
Yeah, no, great question. So we've seen, I mean, also from like proven pricing psychology, if you look at Netflix, if you look at a lot of the things that are inside of your life today, if you look at how Apple, you're purchasing a phone or purchasing a subscription of any kind, you're going to see them side by side. And why is that set like that? Is because you can easily compare and contrast each of them subconsciously, consciously. We're always comparing and seeing, okay, what's the better deal for the impact it's going to have on my life.
Yeah.
So that's why for our platform, we put them side by side, because it gives a really clear indication of how you can compare. We read left to right. You're able to compare the different services immediately, to then choose, what level of impact that you want to have. So yeah, great question
Yeah.
in terms of like how the placement has a lot to do with it visually. Yeah, it impacts us subconsciously and consciously. So
Yeah. I think sort of, I mean, just in a similar vein as web design, there's so much thought that goes into where you should put the pricing, where you should put the titles, where you should put each box. And I think a lot of times people assume like web design or designing an app is just about making sure it's easy and quick, but there's actually conversion that goes into
Yeah.
like making sure the color's right
Yeah.
and how big the text is. These are all small things that can kind of really help you close the deal. And so with that, that may be one issue accounting firms are facing.
Yeah.
But why do you think that accounting firms are undercharging? We'll see that from time to time. It is a conversation. What keeps them from raising their rates?
Yeah, so I mean, historically, it's been more of a hourly based business in terms of, okay, I'm going to do X amount of work for you. This is how much it's going to be in order to do that. Tax, also if you think about from where they've been, okay, I'm just going to charge you at the end of the year for your tax return. Not even, going to send an engagement. I'll send the engagement at the end of the year with the tax return to bundle it all together. So yeah, having a hard time understanding in terms of, because it's such a shifting industry of, how they're changing up what they're even offering and the types of services, and then bring in pricing with that. It's very difficult to kind of navigate. Okay, what should I price? Okay, this is what market rate is, but because also, again, niching down can help you navigate that pricing discussion. People don't realize, like, okay, let's start taking some proven pricing psychology and merge that into what I'm doing, right? So yeah, I think the biggest challenge is just coming from like the historical standpoint of like, let's just charge hourly and that's how we're working. Okay, now we're moving into like a fixed rate and doing kind of value-based billing, but doing bottom up, kind of looking at, okay, this is roughly how much this is how much it's going to take for me to do this tax return. So this is, what the price should be set at. And then, we've talked to a lot of firms where they're like, oh, every year we kind of have a look to see if we're undercharging based off of the rough amount of hours that we spent on this type of tax return. So yeah, so moving away from that is great, because then you can start looking at, again, the type of value that you're providing opposed to just the hours, because the type of
Right.
value that a lot of these folks are providing is huge. It's giving a lot of transparency on people's businesses and how they can move forward with their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something talking about sending out engagement letters and like
Yeah.
just sending it at the end of the year and bundling
Yeah.
it all together makes it
Yeah.
sound easy. But I mean, the whole process, it starts, when you first discover that this service exists or when they first discover you. And then the journey sort of continues through the website. And then the consultation or the proposal is a big milestone in this client journey. Having worked with pricing and proposals and all that, I'm sure you guys have also studied consultations and proposal calls. What does a successful proposal call sound like, and why is the timing so critical after discovery?
Yeah, so we found a lot of times, if you have a discovery call, you don't set up a proposal call on side of that discovery call. A lot of the times you're going to experience maybe ghosting or just slow replies and going back and forth. And why this is because you're leaving room for basically people kind of looking out and saying, okay, what is, let me interview someone else and see what they're charging. Let me, so bringing together the time of like when you have that initial discovery, you say, okay, here are all the different things that I can offer. Finding also the type of pain points that they're experiencing inside of that discovery call is huge, and turning those into solutions when you have that proposal call. And so, yeah, making sure those are closer together to mitigate any, kind of just looking out and seeing what other types of, different, firms are charging, et cetera, and decision fatigue. So
Yeah.
you're going to experience a lot of people having decision fatigue if you leave too much time between that initial discovery call and proposal call.
Yeah.
So yeah, scheduling that in advance, and then quickly also, adjusting. So we have templates inside of our platform where we help them set them up. So you have your perfect pricing for the type of client that comes through the door, but whether they have a specific niche that you're focusing on or the size of the business or other indicators. And then you're able to just quickly send that off before the proposal call and then jump in there to have, a successful call where you're actually walking them through the proposal and asking, questions around, okay, are those still huge pain points for you that we discussed in the discovery call? Here are these solutions. Here are these 3 different options that you can choose from. Asking again, what is your goals for this next year? And helping again, navigating them into the tier that fits best for what they want to achieve in their business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you've clearly reviewed a lot of proposals for accounting firms. What are the biggest mistakes that you've seen when reviewing like thousands of proposals?
Yeah. One of the biggest mistakes, I recently actually just saw it, is when sometimes people think that and it's okay, like we're the experts, we're doing this day in and day out. But what we see a lot of the times is we'll see people putting together 3 tiers and they actually don't build on top of each other. They're fighting against each other. So they might think, okay, like for instance, a bookkeeper or you're a CPA and offering advisory and bookkeeping. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do each tier based off of revenue or do each tier based off of number of transactions. Or recently we were helping out a real estate firm and they were doing it based off of square footage, and that's how they were pricing their tiers actually. So let's get out of the mindset of the tiers are for specific types of businesses in terms of where they're at in their business. Remove that and actually make that a template. So depending upon where a business is at, like their revenue as an indicator, number of transactions, or in the state of real estate, in that case, let's look at that as one template. So if it's like I was mentioning, a $5 million business, there's one template for them where there's 3 different tiers that gives them the option to actually choose any one of those 3 tiers. So you're not basing your pricing each tier based off of that indicator, because what that actually does, like I mentioned, it makes them, it's guiding them to a tier, yes, but it's not allowing you to upsell them on additional services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really, I like want to go look at all my packages and be like, wait, how can I?
Yeah.
I'm like, can we
Yeah,
pause this real
sometimes,
quick?
but sometimes the 3 tiers, it gets people confused because they're like, oh, I should, depending upon my niche, for instance, and
Yeah.
then depending upon where the business is at, I'll just add my tiers, reflect that. But
Yeah.
actually, no, reflect that as a whole template and then have those tiers be something that business could choose any one of those tiers, because
Yeah.
otherwise your tiers will be working against you. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about a client that we both share, and I just
Yeah.
sent her a whole branding presentation on how
Yeah.
she should base her pricing on
Yeah.
3. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to email her and be like, don't listen to me, go listen to Irene. Like,
Oh, okay.
okay,
No worries.
yeah,
I did it in the beginning too, where I was like,
yeah,
oh, wait, okay, if this type of business comes in, then I'll do, they'll go for this tier. But
yeah,
really, like looking at the psychology of it and how the 3 tiers actually work in your favor is by making that one template. So,
yeah,
yeah, oftentimes, like what we'll do is we'll create like a base template for clients, and then they'll use that for their website, and then they'll have their starting prices, and then based off that base template, we'll create like 3 other templates where they could have that next indicator that creates like a sub segment to their niche.
right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, that's really smart. Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
Wow.
No
Um,
worries.
no,
Yeah.
I love that. I'm like, I want to go like
Yeah.
incorporate that into all my stuff.
Yeah. We'll talk offline. We'll help you out.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say, I mean, you have the pricing for the different packages for the different brands, and you have like this whole like matrix of like different pricing.
Yeah.
And so, how do you help accountants that have to deal with price objections,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
but they still want to sell premium services, and they're already getting pushback? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so we have like a template with some price objection, like things that you can say back to them. So, yeah, I'll send you that link and you can link it on here
Yeah.
as well.
Okay.
But some great responses in there. But naturally, actually, your three tier should do a lot of the speaking too. So always, start depending upon who the client is, they're coming through, and you kind of have an idea of roughly what their budget is.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the three tiers does. It really helps narrow what you think their budget might be versus what in their mind their budget is. And it
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes expands what their budget is because if you ask someone point blank, what's your budget? It's going to be lower than what they would actually be willing to pay if they saw a service that actually spoke their language and
Mm-hmm.
talked about the type of value and impact that you could have on their business through your services.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of work in terms of let's take your list of services and transform those into solutions that talk directly to your client in terms of, yeah, how supporting their business to grow. Or are they trying to just maintain their business and they're happy with where they're at? Or are they trying to improve their business? So those three tiers oftentimes will start with the base tier being maintain, middle tier improve, and the other tier, the last tier grow. It's just helping guide them. Or a great example I love to give too is we were helping out a firm that was focusing on dentists. So instead of growth, we said chairside growth.
Mm-hmm.
So again, speaking their language for the dentist, it's like, okay, I'm at the chair, I'm with my client, and it's like a terminology within dentistry. And you're basically saying, hey, you stay at the chair, I'm going to help you grow and have chairside growth because I'm in the back end doing your books, managing, making sure that we're hitting your targets with, quarterly reviews, et cetera, or monthly reviews to reach your goals from a financial standpoint. So it's fun to adjust your language actually inside of the proposal where you're just, again, not just listing services, but listing the solutions those services provide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with that, I mean, we've talked a lot about like the psychology behind things, and you're like in the data and you have all these numbers.
Yeah.
What metrics should firm owners track to know if their price strategy, like the price strategy they have now, is actually working?
Yeah, great question. So, in terms of where their three tiers are at, one indicator without even having to look at, like, okay, what services are selling through more, et cetera. One simple way to look at everything is your middle tier being chosen time and time again? If we've nailed that,
Mm-hmm.
you can be rest assured if you're already niching down or, didn't realize you're niching, but you are niching into a specific, segment. Basically, your perceived value is perceived really high. People are really enjoying your services. They're like, oh, wow, everything that she's been talking to me about or he's been talking to me about makes sense. It makes sense for my business. It's going to help me grow. And time again, if you see that middle tier chosen, we actually need to move your pricing down. Meaning you charge your highest tier higher and then move your highest tier price to the middle tier to the lowest.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's just a great indication besides just, a lot of people look at market rates. A lot of people do like bottom up pricing, inflation, different indicators like that. Or, if they're utilizing three tiers, they're looking at what services are selling through more. So of course you can look at all those things and all those things are great. But like I said, like a simple trick to utilize is, yeah, are people selecting that middle tier a lot? Then let's utilize that as an indication that your services are perceived high and the
Yeah,
value you're
yeah.
providing.
It's interesting because I'm thinking about like all the conversations I've had with my clients over pricing and packages and all these things. And I've always kind of like, here's a helpful blog post. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of information in there, but like, this is like a whole like department. Like there
Hmm.
is so much learning and so much upkeep, and you know, it's something that you can revisit like multiple times, even a quarter.
Hmm.
I mean, depending on how many consultations you're getting and such, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's so much more than just, there's so much more tips and advice to pricing than just, put starting at and give
Yeah.
yourself 3 packages. It's a lot more complicated. And I mean, there's a lot more, I don't want to use the word complicated. There's a lot more information out there on how to be successful in this area than just
Yeah.
some basic tips we've all heard time and time again. Um,
Exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and one of the things too is we offer, because we see this as well, depending upon where that firm is at, we'll come in and we'll give you quarterly advice on where your pricing is, and giving you these insights, like looking at that middle tier. Also, because we see thousands of proposals as well on the platform, you can, get that information from us in terms of what's selling through, where are your peers selling in terms of pricing versus the type of service versus, location of where they're at, where their clients are at, size of business. So we have all of this different metrics that we can then share with different firms so that they can, yeah, adjust pricing, because it's kind of like a website. Like I'm sure you talk a lot about this with your clients, where it's like, yeah, you create your website, but it's never like a set it and forget it. It's almost
Yeah.
like, okay, let's put it out there. Let's get some feedback. Yes, we can put up the website and leave it for a bit, let it settle. But reviewing it, maybe monthly, or not monthly, but biannually or every year, re-looking at it to see, okay, are there some things that we should adjust about this
Yeah.
to improve, just the flow of clients and leads coming in. It's the same with pricing. It's something you always want to keep looking at and adjusting, and not just looking at inflation like a lot of firms do, or looking at market rate and what people are now charging, but looking at your own metrics, and then a lot of the metrics that we have inside the platform that we can share.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And for people listening, I just want to reemphasize. So at Account Groove, it's not just like a pricing, like a proposal platform.
Hmm.
They will help you figure out your pricing strategy. So like, I mean, fair to say like consulting,
Hmm.
on helping you figure out like what's the right price, what is the right price, how to word it, how to put it all together. And I think, yeah, there's so many people struggling with that. What should I charge? What should I say? All those things. There's definitely a need out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Irene. Is there any sort of last words you want to share with those listening?
Yeah. No, just thank you so much again for having me. And yeah, it's been great talking with you. And like you said, we do, proposal to payment automation, and it's wonderful, and it really helps out from an admin perspective, and, making sure that we're accelerating cash flow to you guys. But at the same time, yeah, we have a big emphasis on pricing, do a lot of coaching there. We have some fun, exciting tools actually also coming out around pricing that I think you guys would love, because, yeah, it was a big challenge, on our end at first when we were service providers. We see it all the time across firms too. So we love just onboarding people and making sure that you're winning just straight out of the gate.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you
All
so
right.
much, Irene. There are links in the show notes to Account Groove, and then to Irene's LinkedIn, the company's LinkedIn. And then she also mentioned, I believe it was a blog article on price
Yeah.
objections, which we'll
Yeah.
have all there. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks so much, Irene.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
When it comes to designing websites, the service page always takes much more time than anticipated. It can sometimes be hard to verbalize everything you do, so I always recommend simplifying, which is what I'm going to do right now with MediaBooks. Here at MediaBooks, we offer 3 services for every stage of your business. We offer web design for when you are just getting your marketing strategy up and running, or you need a website refresh. We offer website audit services for those DIYers, and we also have advisory services for those who love their website and are ready to advance their marketing skills. Get started with MediaBooks by visiting MediaBooksAgency.com. MediaBooks, the only place on the internet where creative accounting isn't a bad thing.